Too many Israelis have died, too many Palestinians have died. And at this difficult time, I think it's important for both Palestinians and Israelis to try to work together to lower tensions and to reject violence.
That was President Obama after two Palestinians stormed a Jerusalem synagogue Tuesday morning during prayer, wielding guns, knives and axes in a gruesome attack that left 5 people dead, including 3 Americans. It is a response Wall Street Journal Foreign Affairs columnist Bret Stephens says is all too typical of this administration. He is the author of the new book, America in Retreat, the New Isolationism and the Coming Global Disorder. Bret, you say America's in retreat, but is that the same thing as saying America's in decline?
No, totally different things. Look, Russia's in decline. They have massive demographic problems. Japan is probably in decline as well. Europe is arguably in decline. In the United States, if the historian 30 years from now looks back on the great innovations of the early 21st century, they'll talk about social media, they'll talk about fracking. The U.S. is not in decline. We are in retreat. The difference is decline is something that happens almost beyond the ability of ordinary politicians to reverse. Retreat is a set of policy options. And over the last 6 years, we've had a presidency that has very deliberately wanted to shrink America's footprint in every respect: military, strategic, economic, political, diplomatic. This is the lead from behind presidency, and that is the reason why we are now seeing Russia and Ukraine, the expansion of ISIS, Iran on the cusp of a nuclear weapon.
Well, we just heard President Obama's response to the Jerusalem outrage. Are you saying that that is part of the retreat which essentially President Obama is leading?
Well, it's so characteristic of his style of leadership. You know, Machiavelli once said that a great prince has to be a firm friend and a thorough foe. And what you just heard from the president, this classic moral equivalency, is the very opposite of that advice. He is not giving the Israelis, our ally, that firm friendship that they need in that moment of grief. He is equivocating between allies and enemies. And it's, again, this is Obama. This is the guy who scolds our friends and he coddles our enemies. And that's part of his retreat doctrine.
In your book, are you saying that America should be the world's policeman?
Yes, America ought to be, because ask yourself, who are the alternatives? While the United Nations could be the world's policeman, would you really want to trust global security to them? I suspect not. How about Vladimir Putin and the leadership in China and the Iranians, or some condominium between those three? That begins to look like a world very much like the world that was on the eve of the First World War. That doesn't work. The reality is that only the United States has the will and the wherewithal to police a decent global order.
Do you think we have the will? At this moment, do Americans want to be the world's policeman and pay for it?
Well, when I started writing this book, one of my greatest fears is that Americans had lost that will, and it was a call to Americans to remind them what we call Pax Americana, what a good world that had been. I think in the last 2 or 3 months, particularly since the beheading of Americans in eastern Syria, the American people are waking up and they understand that Obama's foreign policy of retreat and inaction isn't working. It's making the world more dangerous, and they're looking for a foreign policy recipe that doesn't go quite as far as the Bush administration's freedom doctrine, trying to heal crippled societies, but is serious, sober, and politically sellable. And I hope this book is read by the next crop of presidential contenders who want a foreign policy that's worthy of a great power.
Is it simply a matter of leadership?
It is almost entirely a matter of leadership. And remember, we were kind of in the same place in the late 1970s. We had a weak leader. There was a sense that our enemies were on the march, as they were in Iran, as they were in Afghanistan. And lo and behold, we got the right set of policies and the right charismatic leader in Ronald Reagan to reverse that
And
trend.
America responded to that trend in the late 1970s, wholeheartedly responded to it. They were ready for it.
Right. Americans don't like seeing our fellow citizens killed. We don't like being humiliated. We don't like being dissed by dictators like Assad, and I think Americans are ready for new foreign policy leadership.
The book is called America in Retreat. Bret Stephens is the author. All right, thank you, Bret. We have to take one more break, and when we come back, of course, our hits and misses of the week.